Remember, remember, the 5th of November. One movie in particular made sure that we would never forget the significance of the 5th of November. The day when Dr. Emmett Brown conceived of the flux capacitor, the thing that makes time travel possible. Why, if not for that slippery toilet seat, then we might never be able to... Wait, what's on?
Hey there, Matt Hatter. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, hey, Jesse of Coded Lock Reviews. What can I do for you?
Well, see, the thing is, while November 5th is definitely a red letter day for the reason you said, it's also important for another reason. The gunpowder treason as immortalized in V for Vendetta, which was made into one of your favorite movies released in 2006, starring Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving and directed by the Wachowski brothers. And based on the 1980s graphic novel by Alan Moore and David Lloyd, the only graphic novel you've ever read.
How did you know that?
I know everything. Seriously though, if you're going to be doing a books versus movies review of V for Vendetta, you're going to need someone who's read considerably more than just one graphic novel. That's where I come in.
Wait, this is supposed to be a books versus movies review? Well then, where's regular Matt? Hey, sorry I'm late, Hatter.
About time, Matt. Book people always like, what, did you get caught up with NaNoWriMo or something?
Hatter, what's going on?
I'm here to make up for your woeful ignorance of graphic novels as you traipse your way through this review.
You know, I don't really need that much
Wait,
help.
hang on. Jesse, don't you primarily review movies?
My intro has books in it.
Yeah, but you mostly do movies. I mean, it's 2 movie reviewers against 1 book reviewer. How is that fair?
Indeed. That's why I brought him. Come on, Matt, let's knuckle down and kick some movie butt.
Well, I guess I could use some help talking about a partially visual medium. Alright then, with special guest Coded Lock Films...
I don't think I need any help.
Shh! This is Books vs. Movies review of V for Vendetta. Once again, because of how much there is in this story, we have 7 categories. So, with 7 categories and 4 reviewers, this is likely to be our biggest review yet. So let's not waste any more time and start by taking a look at our protagonists. Because of how many people the graphic novel follows, to say nothing of how it follows them, it's hard to pin down definite protagonists in this story. Obviously there's V, the nameless, faceless terrorist behind the Guy Fawkes mask who has become such an icon, but we're not going to look at him. At least not yet. V gets his own category.
That leaves us with 3 people who could conceivably be called protagonists. First, there's Evie, who has by far the most character growth in the story. In the movie, she's played by Natalie Portman, and the difference between her character at the beginning of the movie and her character at the end of the movie is striking. She starts off very timid and meek, afraid of her government and what it's doing, and ends up as an almost fearless entity who makes the final decision to fulfill V's last wishes. Striking though this difference is, we can see the seeds of this strength at the beginning, particularly in her bravado and her occasionally sarcastic manner. She's definitely more intelligent than her literary counterpart. She's aware of the awful things that are happening in her country, while Evie from the book seems barely to be aware of it at times.
But as striking as her growth is in the book, it's a lot more striking in the movie, and it's for that very reason. In the book, we really feel like she's hit rock bottom, and she's treated more as a victim of the world's circumstance than a damsel in distress. Because of that, her journey feels a lot more powerful, and V's initial attachment to her makes a lot more sense. He sees himself in her, a person whose life has utterly destroyed her. And he sees in her the same chance to be lifted out of the gutter. We don't get that as much in the movie, and V's attachment doesn't ring quite as true.
Also, Evie's journey isn't quite as straightforward in the book. In the movie, she's on a steady path that eventually leads to her getting better, but in the book, it's not as simple as that. Her path often leaves her confused, frightened, and even angry right up until the very end, which makes it that much more compelling when she finally does find her way. But let's go to our next protagonist, Inspector Finch, head of The Nose in the book, which is basically the nickname for the investigative office. He's quite fascinating in both versions, but he's definitely different. In the book, even though he's rather vocal in his opposition of many of the goings-on of the government, he still works for them, and more significantly, he is allowed to work for them by the leader, who even allows for criticism at times. The movie Finch is pretty much the other way around.
He's loyal to the party and the government, and though he has misgivings, he keeps them to himself. Throughout the movie, he learns about the things that his government has done, and we watch him try to grapple with the realization that his government has acted against its own people. I think I like the movie Finch a little bit better. The book Finch basically becomes obsessed with hunting down and killing V, and to be honest, I'm not crazy about the turn that his character takes. The movie Finch was on a mission to learn the truth, which means that ultimately he had a lot more to go through. And the actor did a great job of playing this person fighting all of these demons. And finally, we have Adam Susan, or as he's called in the movie, Adam Sutler, the leader and High Chancellor of England. Now you might wonder why I put him in the protagonist category. Well, to be honest, despite the fact that he's a fascist dictator and is essentially responsible for the suffering and oppression in his country, he's still a sympathetic character, and we follow him like we would follow a protagonist. He's not a fascist because he's evil or power-hungry, he's a fascist because he honestly and truly believes that that's the best form of government. In fact, he's pretty much the only governmental character in the story who's not power-hungry. The movie Sutler is pretty much your typical power-hungry dictator. John Hurt gives a fantastic performance, of course, but you don't really get a glimpse into the inner workings of his mind like you do in the book. He's definitely more of an antagonist in this version, but the book character is just endlessly fascinating. So when all is said and done, while the movie had some great portrayals, the book characters are just more interesting and compelling.
But now let's take a look at those evil, power-hungry men and women in the government. Sorry. Here's the antagonists. Now, even though we already talked about Sutler in the protagonist portion of this review, he pretty much is the main antagonist in the movie. Again, John Hurt gives a great performance because he's John Hurt, and making him more of an antagonist does help us connect with Finch's character a little more. Also, the government is just so much more crushing and oppressive in the movie. This is something I'll talk about more when we get to imagery, but it's such a big part of the story that I felt like I really had to mention it here. And we definitely get more of a feeling of darkness and desolation in the movie.
As far as people go, though, we see more of them in the book, which juggles a lot of different characters, all of them interesting, and all of them vying for power in some way. The interplay between these characters is fascinating, as they inevitably destroy each other in their unquenchable desire for power. In the movie, we really only see this tendency with Creedy. And again, both versions of Creedy are very different. He's intelligent and manipulative in both, but in the book he's actually a petty criminal before he's a government official, showing us that the government will go to whatever lengths are necessary to maintain power.
But the movie does this too. Creedy isn't a petty criminal in this version, he's a government criminal. It's his idea to gain power by turning a deadly weapon against his own people and then swooping in to fix everything. He's considerably more ruthless in that way, prepared to stop at nothing to get what he wants.
But just like with Sutler, he's also much more one-dimensional in the movie, a very obvious villain. All we ever see is a man who wants power, and that's really all there is to him. The only other antagonists that really cross over from book to movie are Prothero and Lilliman, and to be honest, neither of them are developed much at all in the movie. We basically see Prothero as nothing more than a loud-mouthed, ignorantly opinionated ass with his own TV show. He's not so much a person that V kills as an object, the means to V's end. In the book, his death has a lot more weight because the importance of him being the voice of England is brought across a lot more strongly. Lilliman gets even less development in the movie and basically has the same problems.
And then there are the countless others from the book that don't even make it into the movie. And it's admittedly hard to keep track of what's going on at times, but honestly, I think that's part of the beauty of it. The interplay is so convoluted that no one knows what's going on. All we need to know is that other than the people who personally wronged him or who got in his way, V doesn't have to kill any of these people. They killed themselves because they were so blinded by their desire for power. The perils of fascism could not be related more strongly than by showing us this interplay. The government itself might be better in the movie, but that alone cannot overshadow this aspect of the book.